I want to just start with some of the rebuilding efforts that we're watching in your country. Prior to the hurricane, of course, Jamaica was doing well economically. What is the outlook now, especially when you consider unemployment, debt, and the like?
Hurricane Melissa could only be described as an atomic bomb of wind and rain that left a trail of destruction through 7 of our 14 parishes. It is estimated that the physical loss of assets would be somewhere in the region of about $8.8 billion US dollars, amounting to approximately 40% of our GDP. 900,000 persons have been impacted. 150,000 homes have been impacted. We've lost 45 of our citizens have died. And it has generated debris to the extent of about 480,000 standard truckloads. So you get a sense of the devastation. But Jamaica is not down and out. The other half of the country is functioning, doing well. And so the strategy is to keep our economy going as much as possible and to use the other half of the country to drive and support the recovery of the half that has been damaged.
Have you been able to secure any additional financing or foreign aid during your trip here for rebuilding?
So to answer your question in 2 parts, firstly, we were prepared from a financial perspective, a fiscal perspective, by having a catastrophe bond, insurance, and contingency borrowing, up to about $1.1 billion. We will have to borrow more than that. We estimate that the recovery that the government would have to support would be somewhere in the region of $4 to $6 billion. And so we are in the process of negotiating, talking to the international financial institutions about how they can support Jamaica. So my presence here today has been very successful in that regard, in mobilizing the resources and support of the international financial institutions.
Do you think it might be debt issuance? Would it be foreign aid? What
it would be a mix. It would be a mix. It would be a mix of things, but clearly most of it would be debt. Now it all depends on what kind of debt. Is it concessional debt? Is it long-term debt? Is it debt that is linked specifically to reconstruction? Is it debt that we can use to support private initiative and private sector? Is it support in de-risking some of these products? So it's going to be a blend of approaches to support and finance the recovery effort.
Is that something you're talking to President Ramaphosa about? What have the discussions with the leaders then been here?
I've met with several leaders, and all of them have expressed solidarity with Jamaica. And we will have varying support, whether it is relief support, recovery support, long-term reconstruction support, financial support. As it relates to South Africa and President Ramaphosa, I will be meeting with him in a few minutes. So I'll have a better sense as to what South Africa will do.
Do you think there needs to be more done in terms of climate financing? That was something that was important for President Ramaphosa as part of the G20. That is something that a nation like Jamaica should push for, does push for. Do you think there's been progress on those discussions?
I think a lot has been said about climate financing. But I do agree with you, much more needs to be done in terms of making funding more accessible, which has always been a significant challenge of just accessing, and in developed countries keeping their commitment to funding some of the initiatives in climate change and resilience building.
Does the declaration go far enough then that we got out of this G20?
I think the declaration is a strong declaration in this regard. I will say this though, the climate change movement is obviously being challenged, as is the multilateral movement. For small countries like Jamaica, we don't see climate change as an academic discourse. Climate change is a reality. We're seeing more intense, more frequent, and overlapping weather events, which could be attributed to a change in the climate, whether it is natural or man-made. The truth is that the change in the climate is having an impact on the balance sheets of countries. We could wake up one day and one event, 40% of our GDP is wiped out. So for us, climate change is a practical thing, and the way to respond to it is for the global architecture, whether it is a financial architecture or the way in which countries relate to each other bilaterally, is to build resilience. So resilience is the bridge, I believe, where both arguments and perspectives should meet.
Prime Minister, I just want to finish on one point. Of course, the U.S. president is not here, but we have seen increased tensions in your region between the U.S. and Venezuela, very close to Jamaica. How do you assess the situation at this point? What are some of the risks that you see here?
You know, we always maintain that the Caribbean is a zone of peace, and we want to ensure that it is a zone of peace. Any action that challenges that or changes that view would have or could have devastating impact on tourism, which is the major foreign exchange earner for most countries in the Caribbean. Having said that, however, there must be consideration for countries in the region for rising crime, rising transshipment, and drugs. So there is need to tackle this business of drugs, transshipment, and rising crime linked to these operations in the region. So whatever is being done should be done with consideration for the economy of the region, safety and respect for the sovereignty of the people. But Jamaica does support actions against drug cartels and other actors that create crime and violence in our country.
Have you spoken to any U.S. officials about that?
We're always constantly in dialogue.